let's talk about knives again. Recently I made a video on this, my new case pocket knife, my first case pocket knife, and the way I came about this I talked about in the video. I'll link that down in the description without going back over it all again. But this, I found out, is not the peanut that I thought it was. This is the small pen knife, Case's smallest knife as far as I know. This small pen knife, 2.63 inches, 2 blades. I really like it. Lightweight, small, fits in my pocket. Don't even know it's there. I have to look all the time. Oh, did I lose my knife? Nope, it's that small. I really do like it, but I mentioned in my video, again, I'll link to that down in the description, that this was going to create a problem because I know myself. And it's already started happening because when you think of storied knife brands, first I think of Case. If you talk about pocket knives, I think Case knives. And if you were to ask me to name another storied knife brand, the only other name I know is Buck knives. So I have here my very first Buck knife with their forever warranty, edge of a legend. This is the 389 Canoe, and I'm assuming that's the color. Let's open this up, because not only did I get a new knife, I got a knife that was super affordable. I purchased this knife, believe it or not, for $11.37, I believe it was, on the Walmart website. This came from Walmart. Came from what is actually picked up in my local store, and just FYI, if you catch this in a store, it's $23.97. I got it for $11.37 or 11 something, under $12. I paid for this knife, the Canoe, and there it is. That Buck branding, just like Case, is a storied classic American brand. Now I have the other, or one of the others, I guess, the other big one that I know, the only other big one that I know of, Buck knives in this little Canoe. This is what I understand their best seller, the 389 Canoe, and it gets its name. You can see the little humps here. It looks like a canoe, and it's small, but it's not small. It's not what I think of pocket knives. I think really small. This is kind of large for me, but it's still small, though I purchased it thinking it was smaller than this one, because the Walmart website said 2.5 for the length, which is usually the closed length. This is 2.63, which you can see significantly larger. I found out that 2.5 is just the longest blade here, which I guess I can show you. Oh, well, one other thing about this Canoe design, one cool thing about it, that raised the Canoe part that makes it look like a canoe, that means there's no edge for either blade, either of the two blades that this has, one of which very similar to the blade in my little Case knife here, because they're both pen knife blades. But you can see this Case, get it in the right light here, you can see that edge. There's an edge even on this other smaller blade, this penknife blade. There's an edge, and I mean, theoretically, that could rub in your pocket. This would not, because it's, well, it's smooth. It's just a nice, smooth finish. And here, let me give you a look at it. This, I believe, I know it's a jig bone. I'm assuming synthetic. But I read this was a red jig bone that they have at Walmart and that it was exclusive to Walmart, but that looks kind of brown to me. And looking at this, 389 the model, BN, I don't know if that means anything to anyone, but I take that to mean brown. Maybe brown jig bone. But there's the bolsters, kind of a nickel look to them. I don't know all the knife terms. I forgot the term for this. There's a term for these inserts, or the handles I call them, but there's an actual term. But I do see some of the things that I've been taught to look for by watching videos. I mean, this is smooth feeling. I don't feel any rough edges, but I do see some, you know, slight little gaps, like a little gap there. And when I open this, because I filmed this 3 times, so I've opened it a few times. It was really stiff the first few times, but this has become significantly smoother. But if I do it with just my nail right there, it's still really tight. But this other blade, this little penknife blade, it is, I mean, right, I can't even do it with my fingernail. I have to grab it and hope I don't cut myself to get it to that point, and then I can open it the rest of the way. And even closing it, it's really, really bindy there and really rough on my, I cut myself with this knife, with the little penknife blade. I've already cut myself, so I'm going to be careful. But let me just open these up and show you, if you're a knife person, maybe you can take something from this. Here is the blades. This blade, 2.5 inches. Again, that's where they got the length from. This one is 1 7/8 inches. So it's closer to, you know, just almost the size of this knife. There's the blades. Here's the markings on the blades. There's buck, and I believe that is their date code. You can see that. The little swirly there. Let you look down inside here. There's no brass in there. It's all nickel, or I'm assuming stainless steel. And yeah, you can see, I don't know how well you can see it, but I can see through all of this. Here's the other blade. See if there's any markings on it. No, some people want to see the machining. Pardon the fingerprints. As I mentioned, I've had this out. Trying to film it already. My mic, my fancy new mics, didn't record any audio, so I think I have that fixed now. But there's the blades, the little nail cut out, the edging on the blades. Give you a look at this one, the machining there, and it's a little rough on the other side, or there's some marks. I won't say rough, but there are some machining marks. Yeah, see them right in through here. That's not fingerprints, that's just roughness on the blade, but it, you know, it kind of does feel sharp. I'm very tentative now. I opened a box with this, and I slid that little blade as I was opening. I just barely, it went, I watched it go by. I didn't even feel it, and I thought, wow, that looked like it was pretty close. And then a little later, I had that paper cut sensation. So yeah, have to be careful with knives. Let me do this. This is something, whoop. Let me do this. This is something, even though that's super tight, this is something knife people do and want to hear. Hope you could hear that, because that's the only shot you're going to get. And blades, and, you know, centered in their little slots there. I'm sure there's a name for that. What is that? Make sure that's, yeah, that's pressed in all the way. Just a little dark coloring there. But I like this. I like this for the price. So why did I get this? Well, I mentioned in my review for that, I've already started looking. I'm even hanging on to this. I look at it all the time. I want one of those. I want a lot of stuff, but I really don't want another thing to collect, because I'm not saying I have an addictive personality, because I don't when it comes to chemicals or things like that. But apparently when it comes to collecting things, I might be a hoarder of some kind, because we're a couple of weeks now into January, a little over a couple of weeks. And I'm already on my second knife. My second big name knife. At least, you know, they're not the top tier stuff, but this one, 60 bucks, you know, $59.99. And even if this one was $23.95 or $23.97, whatever it was, yeah, $23.97, you know, it's still been 24 bucks, but I still spent around 12 for it, $11.37. And I'm already starting to think pocket knife, backpack with my mountain bike knife, and or knife for the scooter. So you see where I'm going with that. A third knife, so I can have one for my scooter, I can have one for my mountain bike, I can have one for everyday carry. And I'm hoping I don't become one of those people that has specific knives for specific days to carry. I'm trying to fight that urge, but I will tell you, I mean, 2 knives, I have some props here. If you watch this channel, you probably know I have another channel, my main channel, Kev Central, where I do mainly bike stuff. And in just a few years, I went from 1 bike to 40. I have multiple bikes. You also know, if you watch this channel and my KevReviews or Kev Central channel, I like scooters too, moped style scooters. And at one point, I had 10 or 12 of those in my basement. And I was selling them at the time, but at any given point back then, I would have about 4 that would be in my personal collection. You know, these aren't cheap. You have to insure them, put gas in them, all that stuff. So a little representation of that here, because today I have 2 of these. And I was on Facebook Marketplace looking at another one the other day. So I have to fight the urges when it comes to finding knives. for $11.37 or under 12 bucks. And they're a decent quality. Yeah, even made in China, wherever they're made. And this is made in China, which I'm going to get to now. Even made in China, I still like it, but I do want to say that kind of drags it down a little bit. Because when I think of buck knives, I would have thought they were on par with Case, and they are. Because buck knives has some quality made in the USA knives. So I was a little shocked when I found out that there was a buck knife at Walmart and that it was made in China. And I get, trying to mass market, trying to make money to maybe offset your premier line, but it does kind of cheapen it a little bit to me. The buck name, Case knives. They are all made, as far as I know, in the United States. Now, I did read, because I am new to this, I did read that Case launched this tech something line of tactical looking knives, and they were imported, but they were at least smart enough to launch them under another name, even if it was tech whatever by Case. It wasn't their coveted Case brand. So I'm a little shocked that maybe Buck didn't do that, but yeah, I understand you need to move stuff, whatever. At least they're making a good knife, even if it is imported, made in China. At least they're making a good one. So I am happy with it at the price that I got it at, but I do think it does tarnish a little bit. What about you? Does that tarnish the name? And do you know Case? Tell me, please. Let me know if they make something outside the U.S. that I don't know about right now, because I looked it up and I couldn't find anything that wasn't U.S. made. But I will say, as far as Buck goes, that their warranty, that forever warranty, the Edge of a Legend, this does, even though it's imported, kind of does have a little bit of their heritage in it, but that's really where a lot of companies are going, right? They'll just take their name and then shill it out to the cheapest labor possible. Before I wrap this up, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too far. Before I wrap this up, let me just give you some specs here on this knife. A little tight, so tight, but I think it is loosening up every time I open this little pin blade. And by the way, pin blade, spear blade, just go over some of these stats, which I printed off. This spear blade, yeah, almost called this the pin. This spear blade is 2.5 inches, which, let me tell you, when I looked up on the Walmart website, it said that the knife was 2.5 inches. So I took that to mean the overall knife. So I had to send someone who had a snowstorm. So I sent someone to pick it up that was in a 4-wheel drive. When they came back, my first thought was, wow, this is heavy. Compared to this little knife, which weighs 1 point something ounces, this one weighs 2.7 ounces. It's noticeably heavier as far as the knife goes, and obviously noticeably larger when it comes to a pocketable knife, at least to me. But it turns out that 2.5 was just this one blade. This blade is 1 7/8 inches. And I will give them props here. I printed this directly off their website. Even in their base description, they do mention imported, so we'll tell them that. And they do cover it just like they cover their US made knives. There's some other information I printed off here. These blades are 420 J2 steel. So I'm assuming that is stainless steel. 420 J2, their thickness. So I can show you that. I'm gonna watch here, not look through the lens. 0.07 inches, and that's both blades. 0.07 inches thickness, 2.7 ounces. I've already mentioned that. Closed. Color. I looked this up before I bought it, and people were saying this was a red jig bone. And I learned, part of my knifing, I hope I haven't already covered this, this is a synthetic brown jig bone. I found out the jigging is that little impressioning, which I like. I do like the look of smooth knives, but I do like the feel of these jig knives. So my early preference is for a jig, but that could just be because it's what I've had in my hand every day. And man, I'm using the living daylights out of this thing. But this, some sort of jig bone, synthetic, I'm sure. And I think that I think that's probably the coloring. So I would think maybe this is a brown jig bone. Just my guess, but it is also available. If you go Walmart, this is the color you'll get, or maybe the red one. If you go to the Buck website, you will get a burl wood option or a wood grain option. If you go to Amazon, they say it's burl wood and brown. So the wood grain they just call brown. So there are 2 other colors on top of this one, and I believe a reddy version of this one. At least those 2 maybe just at Walmart. 389 supposed to be or 389 Canoe supposed to be their most popular knife, at least as far as the internet said. And of course it also here says imported right on the specs. So they tell you, I'll give them points for transparency. I'll give them points for if you are going to import a knife from China with your storied brand and kind of cheapen it a little bit. At least you made a nice knife. Made a good little knife that's definitely worth the under $12 that I paid for it, and I'm happy with it. It can't replace my case though. It can't replace this one. But Case, Buck, I think 2 good brands. One, a more premium knife, you know, $60 versus $12. I don't expect it to compete with the Case. I expect it to compete with my Joy, and that it does. And that's my Buck knife. I'll open this up, maybe get a little parting shot here that I can use as a thumbnail. But that's my Buck knife, my Canoe Buck knife. Look at that. 2 people in the Canoe. I like that little design. I really do. Man, if they could make this in this size, just scale this down, even if it was a little taller, just this length, oh, that'd be so super, super cool. I would buy it. I would buy it just like I bought this one. And I found out on Black Friday they had some Buck knives 2 sets. And by the way, a prop for Walmart for having a knife section or a knife counter where they have boxed knives instead of blister pack knives. That's pretty cool. I kind of like that. It's impressive, Walmart. But they did have blister packed Buck knives for Black Friday, I'm finding out. $20, and they had a trapper with a peanut. You know, I thought this was a peanut at first. I'm going to get a peanut, a Case peanut. But there's a Buck peanut design, and there was a trapper, and those were $20. 2 for $20. 2 knives and 1 blister pack. So I would have picked those up had I have already gotten into the addiction. So next Black Friday, I can already see it coming. That's my Buck knife, my 389 Canoe. What do you think? Comment below. Do you like knives? Do you even care about stuff like this? Let me hear it, and let me hear especially what you have to say about a storied brand made in China. And, you know, am I right? These are all U.S., but Buck may be taking a different path, a slightly different path, but they do still have their premium U.S. knives. So there we go, my Buck Canoe. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.